I recognized the jacket before I even touched it. Navy blue wool, custom tailored, the small tear on the left cuff where Michael had caught it on a fence post during our anniversary trip to Napa Valley 3 years ago. I had offered to have it repaired, but he said he liked it that way, said it gave the jacket character. I remembered thinking that was such a Michael thing to say. Now I was standing in my sister's closet, holding that same jacket, and the world was tilting sideways beneath my feet. I had come upstairs to check on my niece, Lily. She was 4 years old, sleeping peacefully in her bedroom down the hall, her stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. My sister Danielle had asked me to babysit while she attended a work conference in Chicago 3 days. She said, nothing major, and could I please help her out because her usual sitter had canceled last minute. Of course I said yes. Danielle was my baby sister, my only sibling, the person I had protected and defended and sacrificed for since the day she was born, pink-faced and screaming, into our chaotic household. I would have done anything for her. I still believed that, even as I stood in her closet, my husband's jacket pressed against my chest, the familiar scent of his cologne rising from the fabric like a ghost. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to the beginning, to the life I thought I had, the marriage I believed was solid, the sister I trusted more than anyone else in the world. My name is Renee Holloway. I'm 42 years old, a high school English teacher in a small town in Ohio, married for 15 years to a man I met at a friend's wedding and fell in love with before the first dance was over. Michael was charming in a way that snuck up on you. Not flashy, not aggressive, just quietly magnetic. He had this way of looking at you when you spoke, like every word you said was the most interesting thing he'd ever heard. He remembered details, your favorite flower, the name of your childhood pet, the song that made you cry at your grandmother's funeral. It was intoxicating, being seen like that. We were married within a year of meeting. Everyone said we were moving too fast, but I didn't care. When you know, that's what I told myself, what I told my mother, what I told anyone who raised an eyebrow at our whirlwind romance. And for a long time, I was right. We built a good life together. A modest house with a garden I loved and a kitchen that was too small but somehow always felt cozy. 2 cats who tolerated each other. Holidays with both our families, vacations to places neither of us had been, quiet evenings on the porch watching the sun go down. We never had children. It wasn't for lack of trying. We spent 5 years and more money than I like to think about on fertility treatments, specialists, procedures that left me bruised and hopeful and ultimately empty. When the last attempt failed, we grieved together, held each other in the dark, and decided that maybe parenthood wasn't meant for us. We have each other, Michael said. That's enough, that's everything. I believed him. I wanted so desperately to believe him. Danielle came into our lives more fully after the fertility struggles ended. She was 8 years younger than me, a surprise baby, as our mother called her, born when I was already dreaming of college and escape. We hadn't been close growing up, not really. The age gap was too wide, our worlds too different. By the time she was starting kindergarten, I was leaving for university. But something shifted when she had Lily. The father wasn't in the picture. A complicated situation involving a man who turned out to be married, a discovery Danielle made only after she was already pregnant. She had considered her options, decided to keep the baby, and suddenly found herself a single mother at 32 with no support system and no idea what she was doing. I stepped in. Of course I stepped in. I helped her find an apartment, babysat while she finished her degree, lent her money when she was between jobs, never asking for it back, never keeping track. I was there for Lily's first steps, her first words, her first birthday party in Danielle's cramped living room with streamers I had hung myself. Being an aunt filled something in me that had been empty for too long. Lily became the child I couldn't have, not mine, exactly, but close enough to ease the ache. And Danielle became, for the first time in our lives, my friend. We talked every day, texted constantly, shared recipes and Netflix recommendations and complaints about our mother. She came to dinner at our house at least twice a month, Lily in tow, and Michael would cook his famous lasagna while I set the table, and we all pretended to be a family. I thought we were happy. I thought we had finally found our rhythm, the three of us. The sister I'd always wanted, the husband I adored, the niece who called me Auntie Nee and climbed into my lap every time she saw me. I didn't see the cracks. Or maybe I saw them and chose not to look too closely. The first strange thing happened about 6 months before I found the jacket. It was a Thursday evening. Michael had said he was working late, something about a project deadline, a client who needed hand-holding, the usual corporate excuses. I was home alone, grading papers, when my phone buzzed with a text from Danielle. "Is Michael with you?" I frowned at the screen. "No, he's at work. Why?" A long pause. 3 dots appearing, disappearing, appearing again. "Never mind. Wrong number." Wrong number? We'd been texting for years. How do you accidentally text your sister asking about her husband? I tried to let it go. Told myself she must have been distracted, mixed up her messages, made an innocent mistake. But something about it nagged at me, a splinter beneath the skin, too small to extract but impossible to ignore. When Michael came home that night, I almost asked him about it. Almost. But he walked through the door with takeout from my favorite Thai place, kissed me on the forehead, and asked about my day with such genuine interest that I felt foolish for even suspecting anything. What was there to suspect anyway? My husband and my sister, in a relationship that went beyond family dinners and babysitting favors. The idea was absurd. I buried it and moved on. But the splinter didn't dissolve. It festered. Over the following months, I started noticing things I had previously dismissed. Michael's phone, face down on the counter whenever Danielle was mentioned. His sudden interest in the gym, 3 times a week, emerging leaner and more confident than I had seen him in years. The way he sometimes looked at his phone and smiled, a private smile, soft and secret, that he quickly hid when he caught me watching. And Danielle, who had always been affectionate and open, started keeping her distance. Conversations that used to flow for hours became stilted, interrupted by glances at her phone, claims of being so busy lately. She stopped dropping by unannounced, stopped texting as often. When we did talk, there was something careful in her voice, like she was weighing every word before she spoke. I told myself it was nothing. Sisters drift apart. Marriages go through phases. People get busy, distracted, absorbed in their own lives. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening just out of my sight. That conversations were being had without me. That my husband and my sister were sharing something I wasn't privy to. I became hypervigilant. I started nodding when Michael said he was working late and checking to see if his car was really in the office parking lot. I scrolled through Danielle's social media, looking for clues I couldn't name. I lay awake at night, listening to Michael breathe beside me, wondering if the man I had married was the same man I was sharing a bed with. The paranoia was exhausting. And I had no proof, nothing concrete, just whispers of doubt that grew louder with every passing week. Until Danielle asked me to babysit. Danielle called on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my classroom, cleaning up after a particularly chaotic discussion of The Great Gatsby, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Her name on the screen made me pause. She rarely called during work hours, preferring texts that could be answered at convenience. "Hey," I said, wedging the phone between my ear and shoulder while I gathered scattered papers. "Everything okay? I need a huge favor." Her voice was rushed, breathless, with that particular edge she got when she was stressed and trying to hide it. "What's up?" "I have a work conference in Chicago, 3 days starting Friday. My sitter just canceled, her mother's sick. She has to fly to Florida. The whole thing is a disaster." A pause. "Can you watch, Lily, please? I wouldn't ask if I had any other option." I felt the familiar warmth of being needed. "Of course. You know I love spending time with her." "You're a lifesaver. Seriously. I'll drop her off Thursday night so we can go over the routine, and I'll be back Sunday evening." "Take your time. Lily and I will have a girls' weekend. Thank you, Renee. I mean it. I don't know what I'd do without you. The words were sweet, genuine even, but something in her tone made me uneasy, a tightness, a strain, like she was holding something back. I dismissed it as stress. I was always dismissing things as stress. Danielle arrived Thursday evening with Lily in tow. My niece launched herself at me the moment the door opened, wrapping her arms around my legs with the fierce affection of a 4-year-old who hadn't seen her favorite aunt in almost 2 weeks. Auntie Nee, I missed you. I missed you too, sweet girl. I scooped her up, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Are you ready for our adventure? Mommy said we can make cookies. Mommy's right. We're going to make so many cookies. Danielle stood in the doorway, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. There were shadows under her eyes, and she looked thinner than usual, her collarbone sharp beneath her sweater. You okay? I asked. Fine, just tired. This conference has been stressful to prepare for. She handed me Lily's overnight bag, a purple backpack covered in unicorn stickers, and ran through the usual list. Bedtime at 8. No more than 1 hour of screen time. She's been having nightmares lately, so keep the hallway light on. I'll take good care of her, I promised. I know you will. Danielle leaned in to kiss Lily's forehead. Be good for Auntie Nee, okay? Mommy will be back before you know it. I'll be good, Lily said solemnly. I promise. Danielle hugged me then, quickly, tightly, with more force than a simple goodbye warranted. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Before I could respond, she was gone, hurrying down the walkway to her car without looking back. I watched her drive away, Lily waving from my arms, and tried to ignore the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The first 2 days were wonderful. Lily and I fell into an easy rhythm, breakfast together, trips to the park, cookie baking that left flour on every surface of my kitchen. Michael was traveling for work, a client meeting in Cleveland that would keep him away until Saturday, so it was just the two of us. I loved it. I loved reading her bedtime stories and hearing her giggle at the funny voices I made. I loved waking up to her small face peering at me from the side of the bed, asking if it was time for pancakes yet. I loved being, for a few brief days, the mother I had never gotten to be. But on Saturday morning, something changed. Lily woke up with a fever, not high, but enough to make her cranky and miserable. I gave her children's Tylenol and set her up on the couch with her favorite cartoon, but she kept asking for her stuffed elephant. Ellie, she whimpered. I want Ellie. I looked through her overnight bag. No elephant. Sweetheart, I don't think Ellie came with you. Maybe she's at Mommy's house. She's in my room. I want Ellie. Her lower lip trembled. Please, Auntie Nee. I hesitated. Danielle had given me a spare key months ago for emergencies. This felt like an emergency, or at least, close enough. A sick child asking for her comfort object wasn't something I could ignore. Okay, baby, I'll go get Ellie. You stay here with the cartoons and I'll be back in 20 minutes. Promise. Promise. Danielle's apartment was quiet when I let myself in. It was a small place, 1 bedroom, a cramped kitchen, a living room that doubled as a play area for Lily. I had been here dozens of times, helping with repairs, bringing groceries, sitting on the worn couch while Lily showed me her drawings. But today, something felt different. The air was still, heavy, like the apartment was holding its breath. I shook off the feeling and headed down the narrow hallway to Lily's room. The door was decorated with her name in glittery letters, a craft project we had done together last summer, and I pushed it open, scanning the small space for the stuffed elephant. There it was, on the bed, exactly where Lily had said it would be. I grabbed Ellie and turned to leave. That's when I noticed Danielle's bedroom door was open. I should have kept walking, should have taken the elephant and gone back to my car and driven home to my sick niece without looking, without pausing, without letting curiosity pull me somewhere I had no right to be. But something caught my eye. A jacket. Hanging on the back of Danielle's closet door, visible through the gap between door and frame. Navy blue wool. My feet moved before my brain could stop them. I pushed the bedroom door open and stepped inside. Danielle's room was neat, almost obsessively so, bed made with military precision, dresser clear except for a small jewelry box, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. It smelled like her perfume, the vanillian jasmine scent she had worn since high school. And there, on the closet door, was Michael's jacket. I knew it was his before I even crossed the room. I had bought it for him 3 years ago for our 12th anniversary. Custom tailored at a shop downtown, the most expensive gift I had ever given him. He wore it to work, to dinners, to every occasion that called for looking polished and professional. It couldn't be here. It couldn't possibly be here. But when I reached out and touched the fabric, when I lifted it from the hook and saw the small tear on the left cuff, the one he had never wanted to repair, I knew. I knew with the kind of certainty that bypasses the brain and goes straight to the gut, twisting everything inside you until you can't breathe. My husband. My sister. The jacket that should have been hanging in our shared closet, in our shared home, was here. In Danielle's bedroom, hidden away like a secret. Like evidence. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes, hours. Time had lost all meaning. I was aware of the jacket in my hands, the soft wool against my fingers, the faint scent of Michael's cologne rising from the collar. I was aware of my heartbeat, too fast, too loud, filling my ears with a rushing sound like water or wind or the world falling apart. I should have cried. I think that's what most people would have done. Collapsed on the floor, sobbed, screamed, torn the jacket to shreds with their bare hands. But I felt nothing. Just a vast, echoing emptiness where my emotions should have been. My husband was sleeping with my sister. The words formed in my mind, clear and cold, and I examined them like a specimen under glass. Like something that had happened to someone else, some other woman in some other life. My husband was sleeping with my sister. How long, how often? Did they laugh about me when they were together, pitying the oblivious wife who suspected nothing? Did they feel guilty, or had they convinced themselves that what they were doing was justified somehow? Questions multiplied like cells dividing, each one giving birth to a dozen more. But underneath the questions, something else was growing. Something harder than grief. Something colder than anger. Resolve. I took the jacket. I don't know why, instinct, maybe, or some dim understanding that I would need proof. That my word alone wouldn't be enough. That when the time came to confront them, I would need something solid to hold on to, something that couldn't be explained away or denied. I folded the jacket carefully, tucked it under my arm, and walked out of Danielle's apartment. The sun was still shining. Birds were still singing. The world was still spinning on its axis, oblivious to the fact that everything I knew had just been destroyed. I drove home in silence. Lily looked up when I walked through the door, her face brightening when she saw the stuffed elephant. "Ellie, you found her." "I did, sweetheart." I managed a smile somehow. "I told you I would." She hugged the elephant tight, her fever-flushed cheeks pressed against its worn gray fabric. "Thank you, Auntie Nee. You're the best." I looked at my niece, this innocent child caught in the middle of something she couldn't understand, and felt my heart crack open. "I love you, Lily." "I love you, too." I held her until she fell asleep, the jacket still hidden in my bag, my mind already racing ahead to what would come next. Michael came home Saturday evening. I heard his car in the driveway, the familiar rumble of the engine, the slam of the door. I was in the kitchen, making dinner I wouldn't eat, going through the motions of normalcy while my insides burned. Lily was asleep in the guest room, her fever finally breaking. I had given her more Tylenol, read her 3 stories. Stroked her hair until her breathing slowed and deepened. She looked so peaceful, so unaware of the storm that was about to break over all of us. "Hey, babe." Michael's voice came from the doorway. I turned to see him leaning against the frame, loosening his tie, that familiar half-smile on his face. "How was Cleveland?" I asked, my voice steady. Exhausting, but productive. He crossed the room and kissed my cheek, a gesture so automatic, so routine, that I wondered how many times he had made it without meaning anything by it. How's Lily? She had a fever. She's sleeping now. Poor kid. He opened the refrigerator, scanning the shelves. Danielle back yet? Tomorrow evening. He pulled out a beer, twisted off the cap. Guess we've got one more night of playing parents, huh? I watched him take a long drink, his throat working, his eyes on the window above the sink. He looked the same as always, handsome, relaxed, completely at ease in his own skin. How could he look so normal? How could he stand there, drinking beer in our kitchen, after coming from wherever he had really been? Because I had checked. While Lily was napping, I had called his office, claiming to be a client confirming the Cleveland meeting. The receptionist had been confused. Mr. Holloway, he's been out of town, but not for client meetings. Personal time, I think. Personal time. In Cleveland. Or somewhere else entirely. I didn't confront him that night. I wanted to. God, how I wanted to. The words were burning in my throat, desperate to escape, to explode out of me and shatter the careful facade of our marriage. But I had learned something in the hours since I found the jacket. I had learned that I needed to be strategic. If I confronted Michael now, emotional, accusatory, with nothing but a jacket and a suspicious phone call, he would deny it. He would turn it around on me, make me the crazy wife, the jealous sister who was seeing things that weren't there. He was a salesman by trade, after all. Manipulation was his art form. And Danielle. Danielle was due back tomorrow. Whatever I did, I wanted to do it when they were both present, when they couldn't coordinate their stories, when they would have to look me in the eye and explain what the hell they had been doing behind my back. So I smiled. I served dinner. I sat across from my husband and made small talk about his imaginary client meeting and my very real babysitting weekend. And I watched him for signs, any sign of guilt. There were none. He ate his pasta with apparent enjoyment. He asked about Lily's fever, about my week at school, about the book I was reading. He loaded the dishwasher without being asked and kissed my forehead before going upstairs to shower. Either he was innocent, or he was a better actor than I had ever given him credit for. I was beginning to suspect the latter. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Michael, listening to his breathing, feeling the warmth of his body inches from mine. For 15 years, this had been my comfort, the steady presence of my husband, the rhythm of his sleep, the knowledge that I was not alone in the dark. Now that same presence felt like a threat. Who was this man beside me? Not the person I had married. That person wouldn't betray me with my own sister. That person wouldn't lie so casually, so completely, without a flicker of remorse. But maybe that person had never existed. Maybe I had been in love with a performance, a character he had created specifically to win me over. The attentive listener, the romantic partner, the devoted husband who remembered every detail. What if it was all an act? What if I had spent 15 years, married to someone who had never really existed at all? The questions circled endlessly, unanswerable, until the gray light of dawn finally crept through the curtains. Sunday passed in a haze. Lily felt better, her fever gone, her energy returning with a vengeance. I took her to the park, pushed her on the swings, watched her chase pigeons across the grass while my mind churned with plans and possibilities. Michael was working in his home office, or pretending to work. I no longer knew the difference, and we moved around each other with the careful choreography of two people who had stopped connecting. Had it always been this way? Looking back, I could see the distance that had grown between us, the conversations that stayed surface level, the intimacy that had become perfunctory, more obligation than desire, the silences that stretched longer and longer, filled with things we weren't saying. I had blamed it on the fertility struggles, on the natural ebb and flow of a long marriage, on work stress and routine and the simple erosion of time. Now I wondered if it had been something else entirely. How long had he been pulling away? How long had he been saving his attention, his affection, his desire for someone else? For my sister. Danielle arrived at 6:30. I heard her car pull up, saw her through the window, walking up our front path with her small suitcase. She looked tired but happy, the relaxed posture of someone returning from a successful trip, ready to collect her daughter and go home. I opened the door before she could knock. "Renee, how'd it go? Was Lily okay?" She was perfect. I stepped aside to let her in. She had a little fever yesterday, but it broke this morning. She's in the living room. Oh no, poor baby. Danielle set down her suitcase and moved toward the living room. "Lily, Mommy's home." I heard Lily's squeal of delight, the sound of small feet running, the collision of mother and daughter reuniting after 3 days apart. And I stood in the hallway, watching my sister embrace my niece, and felt something inside me turn to ice. This was the woman who had betrayed me. This was my blood, my family, the person I had protected and supported and sacrificed for since the day she was born. And she had been sleeping with my husband. Michael came downstairs when he heard voices. "Danielle, how was Chicago?" I watched them interact, the brief hug, the polite smile, the casual conversation about her conference and his work trip. They played their parts perfectly, two people who barely knew each other beyond family dinners and holiday gatherings. But I saw it now. The way his eyes lingered on her just a moment too long. The way she angled her body slightly toward him, unconsciously, like a flower turning toward the sun. The way they carefully avoided touching, as if any contact might give them away. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind? "I should get Lily home," Danielle said, reaching for her suitcase. "It's a school night, well, preschool night." She laughed, that bright, musical laugh I had always loved. "Thank you again, Renee, I owe you one." "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the warmth like a blade, "I think we should talk first." The room went still. Danielle froze, her hand on the suitcase handle. Michael's smile faltered just for a second. "Talk about what?" Danielle asked. I looked at my sister, at my husband, at the life I had built, now teetering on the edge of destruction. About this. I pulled the navy blue jacket from behind the couch cushion, where I had hidden it that morning. And I watched their faces change. The silence that followed was deafening. I held the jacket in front of me like a shield, watching the color drain from Danielle's face, watching Michael's carefully constructed expression crack and crumble. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was Lily's cartoon playing softly in the living room, oblivious to the earthquake happening just feet away. "Renee," Michael started. "Don't." The word came out harder than I intended, sharp enough to cut. He stopped, his mouth still half open, whatever excuse he had been preparing dying on his lips. "I found this," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands, "in Danielle's closet, yesterday, when I went to get Lily's stuffed elephant." I turned to my sister. "Want to explain how my husband's jacket ended up in your bedroom?" Danielle's face had gone from pale to ashen. Her eyes darted to Michael, then back to me, then to the floor. Her hands were shaking. I don't. Don't what? Don't know, don't remember." I laughed, a bitter sound that scraped my throat. "Let me refresh your memory. Navy blue wool, custom tailored. The tear on the left cuff from our anniversary trip to Napa Valley. The trip I planned for 6 months. The jacket I saved for 3 months to buy." I thrust it toward her. "This jacket, in your closet, how?" "Renee, please." Michael stepped forward, his hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. "Let me explain." "Explain what, Michael? Explain why your jacket was in my sister's bedroom. Explain the late nights, the business trips to nowhere. The way you both stopped looking me in the eye 6 months ago." My voice was rising now, the careful control I had maintained since yesterday finally slipping. "Explain how long you've been sleeping with her while I sat at home like an idiot, trusting you, loving you, believing every single lie that came out of your mouth." "It's not." "How long?" The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Neither of them answered. Lily appeared in the doorway. "Mommy, why is Auntie Nee yelling?" The sight of her, small, confused, clutching her stuffed elephant, was like a bucket of ice water. I felt the rage recede, replaced by something more complicated. This child was caught in the middle of something she couldn't understand. Whatever her mother had done, Lily was innocent. Danielle moved quickly, scooping her daughter into her arms. "It's okay, baby. Grown-up stuff. Why don't you go watch your show? Mommy will be there in a minute." "But..." "Go, sweetheart, please." Lily looked at me with those wide, trusting eyes, eyes so like her mother's, so like mine, and I felt my heart splinter. "It's okay, Lily," I said softly. "Go watch your show." She nodded, still uncertain, and padded back to the living room. When she was gone, I turned back to the two people who had destroyed my life. "Answer me, how long?" Danielle broke first. 8 months. The words were barely a whisper, but they hit me like a physical blow. 8 months. 8 months of lies, of secret meetings, of my husband and my sister sharing something that should have been mine. 8 months, I repeated. While I was babysitting your daughter, while I was lending you money, while I was treating you like family. "Renee, I'm so sorry." "Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't you dare apologize, not yet. I want to know how, I want to know why. I want to understand how my own sister could do this to me." Danielle's eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't supposed to happen, we just fell in love." Michael's voice. I turned to look at him, really look at him, for the first time since this conversation began. He was standing straight now, his chin lifted, his expression shifting from guilty to defiant. "We didn't mean for it to happen," he continued. "But it did, and we can't help how we feel." I stared at him. "You can't help how you feel," I repeated slowly. "That's your defense. That's what you have to say after 15 years of marriage." "I'm not defending anything. I'm explaining." "There's no explanation for this, Michael. There's no scenario where sleeping with my sister becomes acceptable." "I didn't say it was acceptable. I said it happened." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Look, I know this is hard, but maybe this is for the best. We haven't been happy in years, Renee, you know that. We were just going through the motions, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. So you decided to fix our marriage by sleeping with my sister." I decided to stop lying to myself. His voice was cold now, the mask fully dropped. About what I wanted, about who I wanted. I felt the words land like blows, each one bruising something deep inside me. "And who you wanted was her." He didn't deny it. I turned to Danielle. She was crying now, real tears, ugly and uncontrolled, streaming down her cheeks. She looked young suddenly, vulnerable, like the little sister I had protected for so many years. But I felt no sympathy. "Why?" I asked. "Of all the men in the world, why him? Why my husband?" "I don't know." Her voice was ragged. "I didn't plan it. He was just there. He listened to me. He made me feel seen. After Lily's father, after everything I went through, he was the first person who made me feel like I wasn't broken." "So you broke me instead." She flinched. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you did it anyway. For 8 months. While I was helping you, supporting you, treating your daughter like my own." I thought of all the times I had babysat Lily. All the dinners I had cooked, the money I had lent, the late-night phone calls when Danielle was struggling. I had given her everything, my time, my resources, my trust. And this was how she repaid me. "I trusted you," I said, my voice breaking for the first time. "You were my sister, my only sister, the one person I thought would never betray me." "Renee." "Get out." The words were quiet, but they carried the weight of everything I was feeling. "Get your daughter, get your things, and get out of my house." Danielle moved like a sleepwalker. She gathered Lily's bag, helped her into her coat, avoided looking at me as she passed. At the door, she paused. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know that doesn't mean anything right now, but I am." I didn't respond. She left, the door closing softly behind her, taking my niece and my trust and whatever remained of our sisterhood. And then I was alone with my husband. Michael hadn't moved. He stood in the middle of the living room, hands in his pockets, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. The defiance was still there, but underneath it, something else. Calculation, maybe, or concern about what I would do next. "Renee," he said, "we need to talk about this." "No. We can't just." I said no. I moved toward the stairs, suddenly desperate to be away from him. "I can't look at you right now. I can't listen to you explain why destroying our marriage was somehow justified." "Where are you going?" "Upstairs, to the guest room, where I will be sleeping until I figure out what to do with you." He started to follow. "If you come near me right now," I said, turning to face him, "I will not be responsible for what happens." Something in my voice must have convinced him. He stopped. I climbed the stairs alone, my legs heavy, my chest tight. I made it to the guest room, closed the door, locked it behind me. And then, finally, I let myself fall apart. I cried until there was nothing left. Great, heaving sobs that shook my entire body, that left me gasping for air, that soaked the pillow beneath my face until the fabric was cold and damp against my skin. I cried for my marriage, for my sister, for the future I had imagined and would never have. I cried for the woman I had been that morning, the woman who still believed in her husband's love, her sister's loyalty, the fundamental goodness of the people closest to her. That woman was gone now, burned away like paper in a fire, leaving only ash. When the tears finally stopped, I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, feeling the emptiness spread through me like a stain. My eyes were swollen, my throat raw, my body heavy with exhaustion. But my mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in months. I had been living in a fog of trust, of denial, of willful blindness. Now the fog had lifted, and I could see everything with brutal clarity. The patterns I had ignored, the signs I had explained away, the slow, steady erosion of my marriage while I smiled and pretended everything was fine. No more pretending. No more fog. It was time to decide what to do next. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay awake, thinking through my options with the methodical precision of a woman grading essays. Logic, not emotion. Facts, not feelings. Option 1, forgive them. Accept Michael's excuses, believe Danielle's tears, try to rebuild the shattered remnants of my family. I dismissed this almost immediately. Forgiveness required remorse. Real remorse, not the convenient tears of people caught in the act. Michael hadn't apologized, he had justified. He had told me we weren't happy, as if that excused what he had done. As if my supposed unhappiness gave him permission to betray me with my own sister. And Danielle. Danielle had known what she was doing every single day for 8 months. Every time she texted me, every time she asked me to babysit, every time she sat at my dinner table eating food I had prepared, she had known. And she had done it anyway. Some betrayals were too deep for forgiveness. Option 2, burn it all down. Confront them publicly. Tell everyone what they had done, our mother, our extended family, Michael's colleagues, my friends. Make sure the whole world knew who they really were. This option was tempting. The rage that had been building in my chest for hours wanted nothing more than to unleash itself, to destroy them the way they had destroyed me. I imagined Michael's face when his boss learned about the affair. I imagined Danielle trying to explain herself to our mother, to her friends, to Lily when she was old enough to understand. But public destruction was messy. It would hurt people who didn't deserve to be hurt, especially Lily. And it would make me look bitter, vengeful, consumed by the need for revenge. I didn't want to be that woman. I didn't want to let their betrayal turn me into someone I couldn't recognize. Which left option 3. Option 3 was quieter. Cleaner. More strategic. I would divorce Michael. That much was certain. Whatever we had once had, love, partnership, the dream of growing old together, was dead now, killed by his choices. There was no coming back from this. But I would do it on my terms. I would gather evidence, document everything. Make sure that when we went before a judge, there was no question about who had been wronged. I would protect my assets, my reputation, my future. And I would cut Danielle out of my life completely. Not with a dramatic confrontation, not with public accusations, just silence. The slow, steady withdrawal of someone who had finally seen the truth and decided they deserved better. She would lose me. Not through my anger, but through her own actions. And that, I realized, would hurt her more than any screaming match ever could. I emerged from the guest room at dawn. Michael was in the kitchen, still in yesterday's clothes, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Good. "Renee," he stood when he saw me. "Can we talk now, please?" "No. We need to figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out." I moved past him to the coffee maker, my movements precise and controlled. "I want a divorce." The word hung in the air between us. "Renee, don't be hasty." Hasty, I turned to face him, coffee pot in hand. "You've been sleeping with my sister for 8 months. How much time do you think I need to make this decision?" "I know I hurt you, but throwing away 15 years. You threw away 15 years, Michael. Not me. The moment you touched her, you ended our marriage. I'm just making it official." He ran a hand over his face, frustration evident. "So that's it. No discussion, no therapy, no attempt to work through this." "There's nothing to work through. You're in love with her. You said so yourself." "I said I fell in love with her. That doesn't mean I don't still have feelings for you." "Stop." My voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't you dare stand there and tell me you have feelings for me. Not after what you did. Not after 8 months of lying to my face." "I'm trying to be honest." "You don't get to be honest now. You lost that right. You lost everything." I poured my coffee, hands steady despite the trembling inside me. "I want you out of this house by the end of the week. You can stay in a hotel, you can stay with her, I don't care. But you're not sleeping here anymore." "This is my house too." "Actually, it's not." I took a sip of coffee, letting the words land. "The house was my grandmother's. She left it to me when she died. Your name isn't on the deed, Michael. I checked. Years ago, when we first moved in, I never added you because we were going to refinance anyway. We just never got around to it." His face went pale. "You can fight me on this," I continued. "You can hire a lawyer, make this ugly, drag it out for months. But the house is mine. The savings account I inherited from my father is mine. And the life I'm going to build after you're gone, that's going to be mine too." I set down my coffee cup. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have calls to make." The first call was to a lawyer. Her name was Vivian Chen, no relation to Harold from the previous story, just a coincidence. And she came highly recommended by a colleague whose own divorce had been complicated by a cheating spouse. She listened without interrupting as I explained the situation. "Your husband had an affair with your sister." "Yes." "For 8 months." "Yes." A pause. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Holloway, that's particularly cruel." "I know." "Do you have any documentation? Text messages, photographs, anything that proves the affair?" I thought about what I had gathered. "I have his jacket, the one I found in her closet, and I have phone records showing calls between them. I pulled our cell phone statement this morning. There are dozens of calls, some lasting over an hour, at times when he claimed to be working." "Good, what about financial records? Joint accounts, shared assets?" "The house is mine, inherited property. His name isn't on the deed. We have a joint savings account, but my separate inheritance is in an account he doesn't have access to." "That's helpful, very helpful." I could hear her typing. "Here's what I recommend, Mrs. Holloway. We file for divorce immediately, citing adultery. Ohio is a no-fault state, but evidence of infidelity can still impact spousal support and asset division. Given the nature of the betrayal with your own sister, I think we can argue for a favorable settlement." "I don't want his money." "What do you want?" I thought about it. "I want him gone. Out of my house, out of my life. I want this over as quickly and cleanly as possible. That's achievable. I'll draw up the papers today. The second call was harder. My mother answered on the third ring. Renee, how nice to hear from you. How's Michael? How's that sweet little Lily? I closed my eyes, steeling myself. Mom, I need to tell you something. About Danielle and Michael. What about them? They've been having an affair for 8 months. I found out yesterday. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Mom. That's not possible. It's true. I found Michael's jacket in Danielle's closet. When I confronted them, they admitted it. More silence. When my mother spoke again, her voice was different. Older, smaller. Danielle did this, to you. Yes. And Michael, he was with her, while you were married. Yes. I heard her breath catch, a sound that might have been a sob. Oh, Renee. Oh, my baby, I'm so sorry. I know, Mom. What are you going to do? I'm divorcing him. I've already called a lawyer. Good, good, her voice hardened. And Danielle, what happens to her? I thought about my sister, about the tears she had shed, the excuses she had made, the life we had shared before she burned it all down. Nothing happens to her, I said finally. I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to stop helping, stop calling, stop being her sister. She deserves worse. Maybe, but I can't control what she deserves. I can only control what I do, and I'm done being her safety net. Another pause. I'm coming to see you, my mother said. Tomorrow, I'll drive up first thing. You don't have to. I'm coming. You shouldn't be alone right now. I felt tears prick my eyes again, different tears this time. Grateful tears. Okay, Mom, I'll see you tomorrow. My mother arrived the next morning. She pulled into the driveway in her old Honda Civic, the one she'd had since I was in high school, and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment before getting out. I watched her from the window, this woman who had raised me, who had held my hand through every hardship, who had always believed the best about her daughters. Now one of those daughters had shattered the other's life. When she finally emerged from the car, I saw that she had been crying. Her eyes were red, her face drawn, the weight of what she had learned visible in every movement. She looked older than she had just weeks ago, at our last Sunday dinner. I met her at the door. Mom. She pulled me into her arms without a word, holding me the way she had when I was a child, when the world was scary and she was the only safe harbor I knew. I breathed in the familiar scent of her perfume, the same brand she'd worn for 40 years, and felt something loosen in my chest. I'm here, she whispered. I'm here, baby, I'm so sorry. We stood like that for a long time. Michael had left that morning. He'd packed 2 suitcases while I sat in the kitchen with my coffee, watching him move through the house like a stranger. He tried twice to engage me in conversation, to explain, to justify, to negotiate, but I responded to nothing. Just sat there, silent, waiting for him to be gone. When he finally stood at the door, suitcases in hand, he turned back one last time. I never meant for this to happen, Renee. I want you to know that. I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time since our wedding day. That doesn't matter, I said. What matters is that it did. He opened his mouth to say something else, then thought better of it. The door closed behind him with a soft click. And just like that, 15 years of marriage ended. My mother and I spent the day together. We didn't talk much about the affair. There wasn't much to say that hadn't already been said. Instead, we did ordinary things, made lunch, took a walk around the neighborhood, looked through old photo albums I hadn't opened in years. In one of them, I found a picture of Danielle and me from when she was about 7. I was 15, holding her on my hip. Both of us laughing at something outside the frame. We looked so happy, so close, 2 sisters against the world. I stared at the photograph for a long time. You were always so good to her, my mother said quietly. Even when you didn't have to be, even when you were a teenager and should have been too busy for your baby sister. I loved her. I know you did. I closed the album. Has she called you? I asked. My mother nodded, her expression tightening. 6 times since yesterday. I haven't answered. What are you going to do? She was quiet for a moment. I don't know, she admitted. She's my daughter, I can't stop loving her, but what she did. She shook her head. I don't know how to look at her the same way. I don't know how to pretend this didn't happen. You don't have to pretend. No, I suppose I don't. She reached over and took my hand. But I want you to know something, Renee. Whatever happens with Danielle, I'm on your side. You're the one who was wronged. You're the one who deserves support. If she can't understand that, if she tries to make herself the victim in this. She squeezed my fingers. She'll have to deal with me. I leaned my head on her shoulder. Thank you, Mom. Danielle tried to contact me that week. The first text came Monday evening. Renee, please, I need to talk to you. I know you're angry, but we can't leave things like this. I didn't respond. The second came Tuesday morning. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want to explain. There's so much you don't know. I deleted it. The third came Wednesday night, longer this time, rambling. I know I'm the villain here. I know I destroyed everything. But you have to understand I didn't plan this. Michael and I, we tried to stop. We tried so many times, but there's something between us that we can't control. I know that sounds like an excuse, but it's the truth. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done watching you get hurt like this. I never wanted that. You're my sister. I love you. Please don't shut me out forever. Please. I read this one twice. Then I blocked her number. The news spread through our social circle like fire. I hadn't planned on telling anyone beyond my mother and my lawyer, but Michael, in his infinite wisdom, had decided to make the affair public by posting a photograph of himself and Danielle on social media. Starting a new chapter, he had written, as if destroying my life was merely a plot point in his personal journey. My phone exploded. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months called to express their shock, their support, their barely concealed fascination with the scandal. Colleagues at school offered sympathetic looks in the hallway. Even my ex-husband's family reached out. His mother sent a card that read, "I always knew he wasn't good enough for you," with no apparent irony. I ignored most of it. But some of the messages mattered. My best friend, Carmen, drove 3 hours to spend the weekend with me. My cousin Lisa, who had been through her own messy divorce, called every night just to check in. My book club sent flowers and a card signed by all 12 members. I wasn't alone. That realization was more healing than anything else. The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks later. Vivian Chen was as efficient as promised. She filed the paperwork, gathered the documentation, and built a case that left Michael's lawyer scrambling to negotiate. The evidence of infidelity was irrefutable: phone records, his own social media posts, the jacket I had kept as proof. Michael, faced with the reality of his situation, stopped fighting. He signed the papers without contest, agreeing to a settlement that gave me the house, my inheritance, and half of our joint savings. He would keep his retirement account and the car he had bought with his bonus last year. A clean break, as clean as these things could be. The final hearing was scheduled for late October, exactly 3 months after I had found the jacket in my sister's closet. I marked the date on my calendar. 1 more month, and I would be free. But freedom, I was learning, didn't come from a court date. It came from the small victories. The morning I woke up and didn't immediately think of Michael. The afternoon I laughed at something Carmen said and realized it was genuine, not forced. The evening I looked in the mirror and saw someone I recognized, someone stronger than the woman who had stood in her sister's closet, holding a navy blue jacket, feeling her world collapse. That woman was still there. But she was healing. Slowly, painfully, one day at a time, she was healing. And that, I realized, was the only revenge that mattered. Not public humiliation, not legal battles, not bitter confrontations. Just the simple, profound act of surviving, of rebuilding, of becoming someone new from the ashes of who I used to be. The divorce was finalized on a crisp October morning. I sat in the courtroom, hands folded in my lap, watching the judge review the paperwork that would officially end my 15-year marriage. Michael sat at the opposite table with his lawyer, avoiding my eyes. He was wearing a suit I didn't recognize, new clothes for his new life, I supposed. I wondered if Danielle had helped him pick it out. "Mrs. Holloway," the judge said, looking up from the documents, "do you understand and accept the terms of this settlement as presented?" "I do, Your Honor." "Mr. Holloway." "Yes, Your Honor." A stamp, a signature, the scratch of pen on paper. "This divorce is granted. These proceedings are concluded." And just like that, it was over. I walked out of the courthouse into the autumn sunlight, leaves swirling around my feet in shades of gold and crimson. Carmen was waiting on the steps, holding 2 cups of coffee from the cafe across the street. "How do you feel?" she asked, handing me one. I took a long sip, considering the question. "Free," I said finally. "Tired, sad, but mostly free." She linked her arm through mine. "Good, that's exactly how you should feel." We walked to her car together, leaving the courthouse and my marriage behind. The months that followed were a study in rebuilding. I threw myself into work, taking on extra responsibilities at school that kept my mind occupied and my evenings full. I joined a gym, not because I cared about fitness, but because I needed somewhere to channel the restless energy that hummed beneath my skin. I adopted a cat, a gray tabby named Winston who liked to sleep on my chest and purred loud enough to drown out the silence. I learned to be alone. This was harder than I expected. After 15 years of marriage, I had forgotten how to exist as a single person, how to eat dinner without conversation, how to make decisions without consultation, how to fill the empty hours between work and sleep. But slowly, clumsily, I figured it out. I discovered that I liked cooking elaborate meals for one, experimenting with recipes Michael would have complained about. I found that I enjoyed reading in bed until midnight without someone telling me to turn off the light. I realized that the silence I had feared was actually peaceful, space to think, to breathe, to become reacquainted with myself. I wasn't the woman I had been before the betrayal. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I was becoming someone better. Danielle reached out one more time. It was December, nearly 4 months after I had found the jacket. A letter arrived in my mailbox, handwritten, not typed, the envelope addressed in the careful script I recognized from birthday cards and thank you notes. I almost threw it away without reading it. But something made me stop. Curiosity, maybe, or the lingering ghost of sisterhood that refused to die completely. I opened the envelope. "Dear Renee, I know you probably won't read this. I know you've blocked my number and ignored my emails and told Mom you don't want to hear my name. I understand why. I deserve all of it and more. But I need to say this, even if you never see it. I need to put the words somewhere outside my own head. I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry I said that day in your living room, rushed and desperate, and mostly about making myself feel better. I mean truly, deeply, wretchedly sorry. For what I did to you. For who I became. For every moment of the past 8 months when I chose him over you and told myself it was okay because you didn't know. There's no excuse for what I did. Michael and I can call it love all we want, but love doesn't make you betray the person who has done more for you than anyone else in the world. Love doesn't make you lie to your sister's face while she babysits your daughter and lends you money and shows up every single time you need her. That's not love. That's selfishness. That's cruelty. That's me showing you exactly who I am when I think no one is watching. I've lost you, I know that. I've lost Mom. Too, she answers my calls now, but her voice is different. Colder, like she's talking to a stranger instead of her daughter. And maybe that's what I deserve. Maybe I don't get to keep the people I betrayed. Michael and I are still together. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Some days I think it means what we have is real, worth the cost. Other days I look at him and wonder if I destroyed my whole family for a man who will eventually do to me what he did to you. I guess I'll find out. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to respond to this letter, but I want you to know that I think about you every day. That I see your face in Lily's smile, and I hate myself for what I took from her, the aunt who loved her, the family that was supposed to be whole. She asks about you, you know. Asks when Auntie Nee is coming back. I don't know what to tell her. Maybe someday, when she's older, I'll tell her the truth. That I made a terrible mistake. That I hurt someone who never deserved to be hurt. That love is not an excuse for cruelty, and family is not something you destroy because you want what doesn't belong to you. I hope you're okay. I hope you're healing. I hope you find someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved, completely, honestly, without secrets. You were always the better sister. I'm sorry I didn't appreciate that until it was too late. Danielle. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. I didn't respond. Not because I was holding on to anger, though some of that remained buried deep. Not because I wanted her to suffer, though part of me, the small and petty part, took satisfaction in her regret. I didn't respond because I had nothing left to say. Danielle had made her choice. She had chosen Michael, chosen the affair, chosen to destroy our relationship for something she couldn't even name. Whatever came next, whether they lasted or fell apart, whether she found happiness or spent the rest of her life wondering what she had thrown away, it wasn't my concern anymore. I had released her. Not forgiven, not forgotten, but released. She would have to carry her own weight now. And I would carry mine. Spring came early that year. I was in my garden one Saturday morning, planting bulbs that would bloom in summer, when I heard a voice from the sidewalk. "Excuse me, is this the Holloway residence?" I looked up, squinting against the sun. A man stood at my fence, tall, graying at the temples, with kind eyes and a slightly nervous smile. He was holding a cardboard box that appeared to contain a young rose bush. "It is," I said, standing and brushing dirt from my knees. "Can I help you?" "I'm James Whitfield. I just moved in 3 houses down." He gestured vaguely behind him. "I noticed your garden when I was walking this morning. It's beautiful." "Thank you." I was wondering, I'm trying to get my own yard started, but I have no idea what I'm doing. The guy at the nursery sold me this rose bush, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to kill it within a week. He held up the box with a rueful expression. "Any chance you could give me some advice?" I looked at this stranger, this ordinary man with dirt on his shoes and hope in his eyes, asking for nothing more than gardening tips from a neighbor. Something shifted in my chest. "I could do better than advice," I heard myself say. "I could show you, if you'd like." His face brightened. "Really? That would be incredible. I'm completely hopeless." Everyone starts somewhere. I peeled off my gardening gloves and walked toward the gate. "I'm Renee, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Renee." We shook hands, his grip warm, his smile genuine, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Not romance, necessarily. Not the promise of a relationship or a future or anything so defined. Just possibility. The simple, extraordinary truth that life keeps moving forward, offering new moments, new connections, new chances to become someone different. The betrayal hadn't destroyed me. It had changed me. And maybe, just maybe, the woman I was becoming was better than the woman I had been. If you're listening to this story, I want you to know something. Betrayal is not the end. I know it feels like it. I know there are moments when the pain is so overwhelming that you can't imagine ever feeling whole again. When the person you trusted most in the world turns out to be a stranger. When the family you believed in crumbles to dust at your feet. I've been there. I've stood in my sister's closet, holding my husband's jacket, feeling my entire world collapse. I've cried alone in guest rooms and sat through divorce proceedings and wondered if I would ever trust anyone again. But here's what I learned. The betrayal doesn't define you. What defines you is what comes after. How you pick up the pieces. How you rebuild. How you choose, day after day, to keep moving forward even when forward feels impossible. My sister took my husband, but she couldn't take my strength. She couldn't take my ability to love, to trust, to open myself to possibility again. She couldn't take the life I've built since, the friendships, the garden, the quiet peace I've found in my own company. She took what she took, but I kept what mattered most. Me. So tell me, have you ever found something that changed everything? A jacket in a closet, a message on a phone, a truth you couldn't unsee. I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that you can survive the unsurvivable, that betrayal is not the end of your story, please subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because we all need reminders sometimes. We all need to know that we're not alone. Until next time, take care of yourself. Protect your heart, but don't close it. And remember, the people who betray you reveal who they are. What you do next reveals who you are.